Hello, everyone. I'm Dennis Reinicht. I'm from the DP. I've met most of you over the last year, but if you have not spent any time with me, let's make sure we sit and chat together. I'm running the Office of Flood Hazard Risk Reduction Measures at this time, which is both rebuild by design projects on the New Jersey side. I'm standing in for our Assistant Commissioner Rosenblatt, who could not be here tonight. He sends his regrets. What is tonight about? Is there anybody I didn't ask last Tuesday. This is our third event. Can anybody just raise your hand if this is the first sort of interaction you've had with the with this design process with the Rebuild by Design program? Excellent. If you haven't spent any time tonight, I'm going to be in that corner by those 4 panels. I know it's going to be a lot of information tonight, but definitely stop over and I'll walk you through the 3 alternatives that are up on the website, and we have pictures here, and I can make sure that you get on the website and get on our listserv. Also, anybody that signed up tonight and didn't, make sure on your way out, identify yourself, and we'll add you to our website notices. So every time we update the website, you'll get an email from us saying new pictures are up. One of the things you'll see in about a week is that tonight's being videotaped. So the videotape process will take a little while to produce, but once you're on the list, you'll be able to get you'll get notified and be able to play the video from home. You can share it with your neighbors. We've been using it on most of the public meetings, and it's really been a useful tool, especially for people that can't make the meetings. We're all busy. Tonight, what's tonight's purpose? Tonight, it is not about showing you the alignments. We are going to do parts of that, but it's really about having Dewberry engineers and their subcontractors, OMA, and SCAPE, who have done some fabulous work, to present a broad range of design ideas, of concepts, and aspirational visions of how we can integrate a resist strategy to protect from a future storm, which is coming, how we can put that in your community and make it part of your community. OMA thinks about it every day, SCAPE thinks about it every day, and your mayors think about it every day. The design ideas are just a first step. This is the first part of a very long process of getting your input. Some of the things you're going to see tonight are designed to solicit a reaction. People, if you look around, there's going to be people from Dewberry taking notes. We are documenting anything. Verbalize your comments. If they ask you a question, please interact. We are writing all this down. We're taking a sense of the room. But there's also budgetary, schedule, and regulatory concerns that will also have to be evaluated as we look at the ideas that we're discussing tonight. It will be a process. The purpose of this meeting is to elicit your thoughts and input as we work toward understanding your priorities. We are listening. The urban design ideas in the slideshow, which is really excellent, some of them are in all 3 alternatives, so don't overlook some of them. Some of them are in a toolkit. OMA is developing a toolkit. You'll see little flip books. These things can be used throughout. Depending on the alternative we ultimately end up with, these tools and some of the impact you give tonight could be spread throughout the community. Ultimately, a preferred alternative will involve further in-depth design and engineering work and additional meetings just like this. The conceptual design work is ongoing, but the engineering is also going on behind the scenes. Tonight is about urban design. Next month, we're going to have a schedule presented to you of a series of meetings that are upcoming, and I'm going to leave that up to Dewberry to present to you. I'm very excited about this. This is our 3rd meeting on this topic, and the community has been interacting great, and I see very engaged people. And please, again, my name's Dennis Reinicht. Definitely stop and talk to me for a little bit before you leave tonight. And with that, I'd like to bring up one of our biggest advocates, Mayor Zimmer. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank all of you so much for being here, and I know we have Councilwoman Fisher here with us as well, and thank you so much to the state and the Dewberry team and OMA. They've been working really hard. And I just want to reiterate what Dennis just said. I mean, this is a collaborative process. This is a design workshop, and they're going to be doing a presentation. These are ideas. If you like an idea that they're showing over here, well, and you'd rather see it somewhere else, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your reaction. They're designed to get you, to spark your ideas and hear your feedback. And this is very much a collaborative process, and absolutely no decisions have been made. We want to hear your ideas. And again, I want to just reiterate, I know there's new people here. There's concerns within the community about what are we going to be building within our city. And we are very committed, I'm very committed to making sure that it's something that fits into the urban landscape of our city, that it's beautifully designed. And that, whatever it is at the end of the day, is going to be a representation of what the input that we receive from the community. So we want to hear your voices. So if you love what you see or you really don't like what you see, give us your feedback, again, verbally, and I thank the state. They're reading all the emails that they get as well, so feel free to follow up with email as well. And again, as Dennis said, this is being videotaped tonight. The slideshow will be available as well, and we'll put that out there so everyone knows, and this will be an ongoing process as we design something that is in the best interests of our city and protects our region. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken now. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, everybody. Wow, got a full room. My name is Ken Spahn. I am the project manager for Dewberry Engineers, and just really, really excited to be here and be part of this really important project. So we are working on the feasibility and the environmental impact statement portion of this project, and we're developing a plan, a comprehensive storm surge and rainwater management system for the project area. Now, the project area is Hoboken, and then adjacent portions of Weehawken, adjacent portions of Jersey City to the south also. And it's about, just a refresher, resist. It comes from the original vision of resist, delay, store, discharge. So we're going to go through the alternatives quickly. All the alternatives have this delay, store, discharge component. So the resist is to deal with the stormwater that comes in when you have a hurricane that comes in over the wharf and fills up the back of the city. The delay, store, discharge is to deal with more frequent rainstorms that occur where the water can't drain through the sewer system at a high tide or something like that. So, and so all these different alignments and ideas we have to deal with the storm surge include the components for the delay, store, discharge. So just quickly, our agenda. I want to go through the alternatives quickly. Then we're going to turn it over to Laura and Dan from OMA, and they're, as both Dennis and Mayor Zimmer explained, they're going to talk about some of the urban design ideas that are out there just to get input from you folks. Then we're going to break out into different sections so we can have some one-on-one time with people, and you can kind of see up close and up front what some of the ideas are and give us your feedback. So just to talk a little bit about our short-term schedule. This month we've been focusing on urban amenities, and this is our third meeting. We had a meeting Tuesday night, we had a meeting a week ago also, and then there's a meeting planned for April 28th. And pretty much about the urban amenities ideas and anything anybody wants to bring up about what we're looking at this point. In May, we'll have continued discussions on urban amenities, and we're also going to share some of the modeling we've been doing too. And we've also got some 3D models here for tonight, and we'll have additional 3D models in May. In June, there'll be a public meeting, and at that meeting, we'll be sharing the design team's alternative analysis in terms of how we looked at these three alternatives that we're showing you here and how we kind of rate them against each other. We're going to look at things like the cost of each one. We'll be doing a benefit cost analysis of each one. We'll be looking at environmental impacts for each one and modeling results for each one of these things. So you can kind of look across the canvas and compare these different alternatives, and we can hear from you which alternatives you like. And then ultimately in June, July, we'll have another community meeting which will share where we are with the preferred alternative at that point. And then longer term, we're looking, it is an EIS process, so there'll be probably a public hearing for the draft EIS in the fall, and then towards early 2017, would be when the record of decision would occur. And I think the state will be looking to start the design process in earnest in 2017, and then ultimately go into construction sometime in 2019. That's the goal at this point for the schedule. So just quickly, I'm going to run through the alternatives. It's kind of difficult to see here, so I apologize. There's boards back there so you can see them up close when we break out. But alternative one is really the most protective. It protects most of the property in the project area. It pushes the resist barriers all the way out to the waterfront. They have to deal with wave action out there. They're fairly high out there. One of the things about all these alternatives, as I said earlier, they all include delay store discharge options for dealing with rainwater. Also, the southern end, by the transit tracks and so forth, there's not a lot of options to deal with surge protection down that area, so there's a lot of these different alternatives in that area, in that zone. It looks similar. There's two different options, though. One is for along the Observer Highway, and then also if the development moves forward in the transit yard, we could also move that alignment further south, where it would be between the future development and the transit yard. So you'll see that on every one of these. The other thing I want to point out too is on all these maps, at the bottom right of where the plan view is of the project area, you can see a blue area in a small inset map of the project area. That blue area is the current zone, flood zone, the current 100-year or 1% chance flood zone. And so you can see how most of the project area is removed from that flood zone with the resist barriers in place. Alternative two is an inland approach, and it ties in by 19th Street HBLR station in Weehawken at the north end, and it comes down along the waterfront by the Weehawken Cove, and then gets to 15th Street and heads east, and then comes up Washington Street at the north end. So it's somewhat of an inland portion. And so there are some areas that are outside the protected area, and those areas are in blue. You'll see those areas. And those areas, generally the water comes in during a storm surge. It comes in and then it retreats within several hours in those areas. The big problem that Hoboken had in particular was when it filled in the western part of the city and the water just sat there and there was no way for the water to get out. Now, the south end is similar for alternative two as alternative one. And then alternative three ties in at the north end in pretty much the same location by the HBLR station, Lincoln Harbor, and then also comes down along the waterfront through Weehawken Cove, and it goes up a little bit up Garden Street and then ties into an area we call the alleyway, and then goes through the alleyway to 15th Street, not 15th Street, I'm sorry, Washington, and goes south on Washington. Just goes a little bit over 14th Street, where the elevation, the existing elevation in the city is high enough, so you don't need a resist structure beyond that. So there's information on the boards in the back. There's information about the height of these barriers and different things like that. So I'd suggest you take some time and during the breakout session and go look at those closely. Also, as I said earlier, delay store discharge is dealing with rainwater. So this is part of all those three alternatives I just mentioned. And the idea is when it rains, there's areas of the west part of the city that flood. The idea is to capture that rainwater and hold it in different areas until the storm passes, and then either put it back into the storm sewer system or pump it out into the river. So there's a couple of different ideas on how we would approach that. And with that, I will turn this over to our folks from OMA, Laura and Dan, to talk about urban design.
Hi, good evening. My name is Laura Baird. This is Daniel Pittman, and we're representatives from OMA and have been working together with Dewberry and Scape to start to present a few ideas to you this evening about the urban design components. So especially for those of you that aren't familiar with the project, You'll probably hear a lot of jargon, a lot of terms that maybe seem new, but we're going to try and make things as simple as possible and talk you through, because really this is about you. It's about your community. It's about the cities in the study area and what you would like to see. So we have split, we'll explain a little bit more carefully, but we've split the study area into 7 zones, starting at the north, working our way to the south. And what we'll show across those zones is some ideas we have for amenities and co-benefits and other ways that we can program some of the sites that we're considering to offer you something great. We have a really tremendous opportunity here with this funding and want to do something really great with it. So as was introduced by Dennis and the mayor and also by Ken, this is really an initial starting point. We're in the middle of the design process. This is by no means a set of proposals. If there are things that you like, things that you don't like, please let us know. If there are considerations we're not taking into account or ideas you have that you don't feel are represented, please let us know that as well. And with that, I think we'll kind of start to dive in. As you know, this is the study area that we've been looking at in the context of the study, and Ken just went through the various alternatives. What he explained that the way the alternatives differ in what's called the resist alignment. So there are 3 resist alignments, which essentially means the barrier that will be primarily trying to protect against the coastal storm surge. The delay, store, and discharge sites on the interior of the city are the same for all 3 alternatives. So that was kind of basically explained. So now we're at the point in the project where we have to take these lines off the paper and try and understand what it means. What is an alignment? What is a barrier? What do these structures look like? How do they perform? What do they do within the city? And so there are some very straightforward ways to look at that, some things related to kind of engineering and really hard infrastructure facts, such as height. And then there are more loose or less straightforward ways, but equally important ways to think about it. So what is the urban identity actually? Is there any signage opportunities? Can it help you find your way through the city? Can it offer you things like seating? Can it offer you different places to rest? Do you need to traverse that area quite often? Seasonality, what's happening already in the city? Are there existing initiatives we can plug into or build on top of? So as we start to think about how these structures really look, we started to take all of this into account. And again, if there are things you feel we're omitting, please let us know, but we have a kind of exciting range of considerations. To build on this, we've tried to basically break things up into 3 different types of design. So places, services, and identity. What do we mean by that? So placemaking is essentially taking the sites that are larger with the greatest opportunity for designing some type of community amenity and also programming that. When we say program, what we basically mean is the types of activities that will happen there. What will take place there, how will it be used on a daily basis. Contrary to that, very different from that, is the idea of services. So the sites that we've identified as kind of more services-based urban design is really when you don't have a lot of area to work with. Maybe the width is very small. The public right-of-way is very narrow, for example. And essentially what this requires is facade treatments or more minimally designed structures, and it's a little bit more of an engineering task than it is a real kind of over-the-top design task. And then lastly, the idea of programming design. So again, what type of activities are happening here? And this really relates to areas that aren't even necessarily right on an alignment, don't necessarily have a structure running through them, but maybe they are adjacent to some of the sites and there's an opportunity to do something there. So it doesn't mean building something, it means introducing a new way that the area can be used. So these are the sites we've identified as the places. This in the blue, which is a little bit more difficult to see, is more the services. And we've developed a number of design guidelines through which we'll talk you through a series of these.
Thank you, Laura. So Laura talked about the 3 ideas of places, services, and identity. We can also think about them in the context of the framing of this project at large. We started off this process creating a purpose and need statement that highlighted what the goals that we were trying to achieve. And first and foremost, it's about dealing with the risk of flooding, but we also talked about the need to bring enhancements to the city, urban amenities as we're talking about today. So when we talk about those three ideas of places, services, and identity, think about it in that context. The way we have approached the design and integration of those ideas is twofold, as Laura has suggested. Design guidelines is really for that large extent of the project area where there isn't the space nor opportunity or perhaps desire to have a highly programmed activated space. However, we can do more than simply leave the base infrastructure. So the way we've approached that is looking at the length of the project area and try to think about the infrastructure and what opportunities that it might bring. So based on height, what are activities that could be associated with that? Mapping that out across the extent of the site to see where those opportunities lay geographically. We've also thought about what we can do with the with this infrastructure as an object. So if you have the initial core in terms of performance and technical performance, is there what can we do in terms of adding, subtracting, layering on to start to create opportunities for enhancement? You can also think about that in terms of morphing that underlying structure to provide whether that's slopes, stairs, so forth. So if that's the how of shaping these things, now the question is, what does that allow us to do? And think about it as a kind of matrix of all of the opportunities that you would normally associate with an active, vibrant street. So you want to be able to have the sharing of information, lighting, furniture, whether that's bus stops or benches, whatever. There's also other things that the city is looking at in terms of the microgrid or Wi-Fi. How does that get baked into this new infrastructure opportunity? The toolkit that was mentioned is our initial attempt to start to codify that and explain what that opportunity set is. The idea behind guidelines, very much as you would approach planning guidelines, historic preservation guidelines, it gives a set of options that you can start to use and apply to the situation, to a local condition, to give this the various effects. Design zones is the different approach. It's the approach that we've taken for the places. So it's those areas that Laura suggested that that there is an opportunity to do more, to create a place and something unique within the city. The design zones, 7 in all, that divide the city into kind of local areas so that they have a specific character. There's similar concerns. For our benefit as designers, that allows us to focus on certain neighborhood dynamics and calibrate appropriately. It also helps us better communicate the scale of getting down to the person and the street. So moving from north to south, the first zone is the tie-in to Hoboken and looking at the area there. One thing to note is that the 3 alternatives are kind of sketched out. Where it's appropriate in the zones, they are articulated as separate ideas. Note along the waterfront where that's only the one alternative that is relevant. So what we've done here, and this layout is similar across the different options, is we have a site map that shows the immediate context. We have the line of the alternatives that are running through, and oh, green, very nice. So the line of the various alternatives running through the site, as I said, this area is interested in the places, so we've identified a number of opportunity areas where we could do that greater programming. First, looking at alternative 3, which is the inland option. There, because of the proximity to the roads, the limited space, that's really an example of the type of place where that toolkit approach is most appropriate. So you can augment the infrastructure, the barrier, you can make it more useful to that immediate street area, but we don't want to do much more than that. That's also true for alternative 2. But when we get to alternative 1 along the waterfront, there's perhaps some opportunity for more. In this case, looking at the ferry stop by Lincoln Harbor and taking a number of approaches, and as was iterated previously, these are suggestions, ideas, and how to start to think about these areas. In this case, the space that's afforded by the kind of rest stop there allows us to traverse the barrier and also start to feed in amenities, viewing area and such that would kind of amplify the ferry stop. Or we could take a much more deliberate approach as a waiting area and start to create a kind of folly that will serve as waiting stop, but also can be programmed for other things. There you have it in detail. Further south, there's a kind of park area and the question is what attitude to take with that. Do you incorporate it into the waterfront boardwalk condition, or do you have it facing the road? And what we've shown with stepped, sloped, and sheltered are different attitudes that you could take and the opportunities that affords. So in step, that's the barrier, which along the majority of this length is positioned so that it maintains the boardwalk immediate access to the water, but would create a separation between that and the road condition. Here there's a little bit more breathing room, and the idea that you could start to fragment that wall in terms of its opportunity to provide kind of urban furniture. This is a more aggressive landscaping route, so that it's creating a space that would lend itself to flexible programming, but also creating the opportunity for an elevated landscape and viewing area. Whereas this is focused on a much more program-centric view, so creating the space that would allow you to have activities and host activities that were proximate to the water. In summary. Laura?
Hang in there. I know this is a lot of information. As we talk you through these, Daniel and I, so the key to always pay attention is that up here we've mentioned which alternative this idea is related to. So in this case, I'll talk you through a couple of ideas we have for this Harborside Park. It applies, for example, to all three. Some of the one that Daniel mentioned were only about alternative 1, and moving forward there will be some individuals as well. So just to kind of locate you within the context of these descriptions, the Harborside Park along Weehawken Cove is an area of huge opportunity. We've heard a lot of feedback about wanting the resist structure to be back further from the buildings. We are happy to accommodate that. We think it's possible. We're looking into it, but we have two different types of ideas about the park. Some relate to its actual topography and how it's laid out, and then others relate to the materiality of it. So in all three of these kind of topography and layout conditions, multiple different materiality can be applied. What do I mean by that? So one way that it can be configured is that the high part, so the actual resist structure would be water facing, would be on the back side, city facing. So the park would be at a high point closest to the city and then slope down towards the cove. A second variation would be that it would actually be water facing the high point and sloped down towards the city. A third or kind of hybrid variation is that the high point would run through the middle of the site, meaning it can be sloped towards the cove and towards the city. So you have kind of a double condition. Within each of these three topography organizations, we imagine it could have a very different materiality. So whether it's sloped away or toward the city, it could become a really nice new urban lawn with playground and other amenities and types of equipment. There's also examples of a kind of urban beach condition, which we think could be really nice along the waterfront to create a new type of recreation within the city, or even something as simple as a giant playscape. And we've heard ideas about being able to incorporate this with something like a dog run or a dog park. Any of these are really options for any of the organizations that we talked about. So within this overview, we have a couple of directions. Please let us know if you have further ideas. Moving south into the residential zone, what we're calling Zone 3. We have 3 different studies for this because depending on the alternative, the alignment runs in 3 different areas. So first we'll look quickly at the Weehawken Cove Promenade. This is a condition where the alignment or the resist structure runs essentially along the water. So there's different ways you could configure that. You could put it along the water where it itself becomes a kind of viewing platform. And then you have steps up that could in the end be relatively inhabitable. So they create, again, places for recreation, places for gathering. You can even have a sword fight there if you really want to. A second option is that the landscape would essentially be sloped and it wouldn't create a viewing platform condition on top, but in and of itself it could become green, it could become playscape. There's any number of things that the sloped landscape could evolve into. And the third is this idea of what we call undulating paths. So when the paths kind of go up and down, and you can climb up and walk along in a kind of single trajectory. So something along these lines, it takes up probably more space within the kind of what's now the sidewalk area, but might offer, again, a kind of different condition, a nice recreation zone. So what you can see in this overview is the 3 different conditions of what your view would look like towards the water, depending on which idea you might pursue. Within alternative 2, the alignment comes down Washington Street. So we have a couple of initial ideas for this area. We've been getting a lot of great feedback in trying to build on these, but I'll run through them quickly. The condition here right now is a 2-way street with diagonal parallel parking on either side. So in order to really do something other than just send a wall down the middle of the street, we wanted to try and think how we could maybe reconfigure this in an interesting way. One way is to create a kind of pedestrian island in the center. What it would mean is reconfiguring the parallel parking to be straight on either side and then retaining the traffic going in 2 directions. This island could be programmed or could house activities. And even if, for those of you who are concerned about losing some of the parking, could even get relatively high at one end, and the parking could be placed up underneath. So that's one direction where you create a kind of semi-elevated public square, a place in the city where, again, play or gathering or recreation can happen. A second option is that the sidewalk simply widens. You retain the 2-way traffic it's just simply moved to one side of the road. And within this widened sidewalk, a number of things could happen. We're showing an idea about a kind of play space where you have, the form that we're showing is really, it really could be anything, but just to turn it into a play space for kids, pockets for informal gathering, things like that. Something like a kind of play landscape with a very simple materiality, actually. And then the last option is that you actually retain the width on one side of the road and your sidewalk gets less expanded than in the kind of second idea that I just showed. And in this case, you would probably have a very low resist structure running along, but we propose a little bit of variation in terms of it could go back and forth in a sort of zigzag pattern and create new opportunities for seating, new opportunities for planting, things that could happen where even the businesses along Washington Street could use it as outdoor seating when the weather is nice. So just a really minimal intervention that could actually provide some nice amenities along that area. And then the third, within this zone, the third area of study is the alleyway. As Ken mentioned, the alleyway is a little bit special because there are some issues of ownership, whereas the rest of the sites represent public land, but it looks like we're in conversation and we'll be able to potentially pursue looking into using this option, at least within our area of study at this point. So within the alleyway, the condition is that it's very narrow, but even so, there are a couple of things that you could do. The nice thing is that it's off the street a little bit, not in a very high traffic area. So how could this essentially look? One option is simply to build on the idea we had within the Washington Street, kind of the minimal version. Again, you could have the resist structure that runs along and creates these pockets of just very simple amenities, green, seating, tables, planting, things like that. But we wanted to consider what happens because coming out of this building you have an egress situation, and we don't want to deny the residents of that. So another idea we had was to simply allow one side of this to ramp up. So this would still be at ground level and this side could ramp up. And this can take any number of configurations. It can be a very simple ramp on one side, and again, these kind of little pocket parks on the other. It can also be a more banded configuration where this even becomes seating along here, the ramp up the center to a platform, and then a simple green strip on either side. A third idea we had was about some type of reconfigurable roof. So with your resist alignment would run along the side, and the roof which could be open, closed, or some version in between. And then thinking on the sort of more eastern part, a series of nesting canopies possibly, which could again be movable. So just trying to also consider ideas about covering or protection, shade, things along those lines. So here are a few concepts related to that. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Daniel.
The waterfront. So Zone 4, what we've done is pick out two conditions that are emblematic. One is the junction between the pier and the boardwalk. The other in Maxwell Place Park, an opportunity with a more expansive area. In looking at the waterfront, it's understood that the waterfront is arguably the biggest urban amenity that the city has. So how can we integrate into that and enrich it with the infrastructure that we're proposing? Two ways of thinking about that. One is a highly programmed view versus a much more kind of landscaped treatment. In the programmed view, looking at tiering and creating layers of occupation for any number of activities. Whoops. And for the landscaping, something that is more graded and progressive, and looser and flexible in its occupation. As we see here. So Maxwell Place Park, again, we've taken that same attitude of flexibility versus maximum programming opportunity. So in this proposal, suggesting an elevated plaza that could be a flexible event space in certain circumstances, very much like the type of pier dynamics you get further south, versus a programmatic spine, taking the attitude of how can you really maximize the opportunity for recreational facilities. The south waterfront condition is fundamentally different. Certainly there's the existing piers and the programming and facilities that they bring, but because of the elevation there, the barrier condition is different. It's lower and therefore and inland and has the opportunity to be integrated in a softer way with what is currently there. Two views of how to look at that. One is looking at the kind of typical coastal condition from city to water, and starting to think about the kind of layers of programming that you could place in, and having that infrastructure start to weave in and out and accommodate that. Versus something that's more organic, creating resting moments, pockets, spaces that you could inhabit, much like you see here. So one thing that we've heard previously is along the southern part of the project area, you have a condition where there's similarities across all three alternatives. And as Ken mentioned, the option 1 and 2 respecting the dynamics around the development site there. For this area, our view is that as a TOD node, as a major piece of transit infrastructure, there isn't necessarily the opportunity for it to be highly programmed, for it to be a place, but there is still a great degree of need in terms of being able to provide the services that you expect of a street. So whether that is in the decorative plantings, or whether it's in providing shelter for bus stops, parking for bikes, on and on. There's also the view that there's, as is suggested, different ways in which you can think about the materiality, the treatment, the identity of that area. That view also applies as you go further west to the area where you have the underpasses and the various treatments there.
Okay, on a final note, Pippa, maybe you can raise your hand. If you have any questions about delay, store, discharge, she's your girl. We just wanted to mention briefly, there's a station set up completely devoted to the delay, store, and discharge sites on the interior of the city. They essentially are split into two types: the right-of-way sites, the public right-of-way sites basically along sidewalks being one, and then the larger, more complex sites which fall in our category of the kind of the more public and place-making sites. Today she'll talk to you a little bit about some ideas for BASF and Block 10. Just as a brief overview, the right-of-way sites are essentially sites along sidewalks, public sidewalks, where there's a storage tank. There's two different types of, basically to take water out of the system. There's two types, the narrow and the wide sidewalk sites, and together with Scape, we've developed some ideas for how the different variations of how this could look and what, again, amenities this could provide. So Pippa will answer questions you have about that, and then present a couple of their ideas about the larger, more placemaking sites within the interior of the city. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ken and encourage you to come see us with any questions or clarifications in the breakout session. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura and Daniel. I applaud them after their presentation usually. They'll be hurt. So, just want to remind you, we have the stations in different locations. So we have Station 1 here, which is Zone 1, 2, and 3, which is basically the Weehawken area and areas like the Alleyway, Washington Street, 15th Street, and the Weehawken Cove right here in Zone 1. or Station 1. And then Station 2 is the waterfront, so that's Zone 4 and 5. That's the northern waterfront, southern waterfront in Hoboken. Station 3 is in the back here, and Station 3 is the southern area along Transit, Observer Highway, and so forth. And then the fourth station is PIP is going to be on, and that is for the delay store discharge. So at each station, there's our sheets for you to fill out if you've got any comments. And we've also want you to think about questions when you go to these stations, and we've actually got some sheets with these questions on them, and maybe you can answer these questions. And it's what features, characteristics are important in this zone to you individually? What features do you like about the design concept for this zone? Also, if you have any other ideas, please share them. Do you have any concerns with the proposed design ideas? What area within the zone is important to you? And these are just some thoughts. You may have other questions, obviously, that you want to mention and answer. And what elements are missing from the design concept for this zone? So with that, there's also toolkits. Laura and Dan mentioned their toolkits. So every station has a toolkit, which is a little kind of a brochure you can look through to trigger some ideas. So with that, we're just going to break out into these different areas. We've got a little less than an hour left, and I would encourage you to go to the different zones and also go over to the boards that have the alternatives on them so you can see what those look like, and there'll be people there to answer your questions. And there's no time limit for each zone, but we would encourage folks to kind of look around at all of them. And that's it at this point. So we break out to the stations.